For my final project, I decided to do a discovery project where I recreate an 18th century Korean moon jar. So this is the specific piece that I chose. Like I said, it was made in the 18th century in Korea during the Joseon dynasty. I might have mispronounced that, sorry about that. It has a large bulbous body with a larger rim than a foot. It was made out of impure porcelain, which is pretty equal to today's B-mix, and glazed in white. Currently, it is in the British Museum on display. I knew this would be a long project, so I got together a plan. I was going to buy some B-mix, test throw it, and ask for some advice. Next, I would wedge the clay through the sections, attach and store until they were leather hard. Next, I would trim the piece, dry it out, and bisque fire. After that, I would glaze the piece, clean it up, and glaze fire it, and then finally photograph the final piece. So step one was to buy some supplies and get advice. So I purchased Cone 10 B-Mix clay from just the university, and since I hadn't thrown with it before, I wanted to get a feel for like the elasticity of the clay and just how the material worked. And so I threw a couple smaller pots just to practice. After that, I asked for advice from my peers and professors, and one of my ceramics professors ended up actually giving me a demonstration to show some helpful techniques. The second step in this process was to wedge, throw, and attach. So I started off by wedging the clay just to remove the air bubbles and to make sure that all of the clay was the same consistency. I then threw the first section on a bat. I ended up using about 10 pounds for this, and I then covered the rim with some plastic and let it dry just to increase the strength. I ended up using a blow dryer just to speed up the process a bit. And while that first piece was drying, I ended up throwing a second section on a bat, and I wanted to make sure that both of the rims were the same size and diameter, as well as that they each had a slant alternating from each other so that the pieces would sit flush together once I stacked them. After that, I stacked them, and then I just threw the two pieces together and altered the shape to be more bulbous and round like a moon jar. I then just covered the entire piece with plastic and let it dry out for a couple days until it was leather hard. The third step in this process was to trim, dry, and bisque fire. So at leather hard, I trimmed and shaped the piece on top of a chuck. While trimming, I focused on the shape just to make it a nice round shape, as well as adding a foot. And I made sure that the foot was smaller in diameter than the rim of the piece. I then just signed my maker's mark and allowed the piece to dry slowly until it was bone dry. Once it was bone dry, I placed the piece on the firing shelf to be bisque fired. The fourth step was glaze, clean, and second firing. So in order to glaze a piece of this size, I had to get a rotating stand and place a large stainless steel bowl on top of it with some wooden dowels, and then my piece went on top of the wooden dowels. This allowed me to pour the glaze on the exterior of the pot while spinning it in a circle just to try to get a nice even coating. Once the exterior was dry, I glazed the interior just by pouring some glaze in there and then pouring the excess glaze out while spinning the pot so that it was a nice even coating. I then had to clean up some of the glaze that got onto the foot of the pot, and I went over the pinholes with my finger just to buffer them out. I then placed the piece on the Cone 10 glaze firing shelf. This was the end result that I came up with. Overall, I had a lot of fun attempting this recreation. I specifically enjoyed the techniques used, and I will continue to use them in the future. Although it's not a perfect recreation, I'm pretty happy with the end result. I faced a lot of different challenges and had to do a lot of problem solving throughout it. I had also never attempted a piece of this size using this clay material and using these specific techniques. So although it's not perfect, I think that it was a good first attempt. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to make a second pot, but I plan on making another large moon jar in the near future because I really enjoyed the whole process. To me, it was a great learning opportunity as well as a great challenge. Thank you for watching.